Billionaire CEO discovers incredible surprise, wife and triplet daughters stranded at airport. Mark Thompson strode through the crowded halls of Los Angeles International Airport, a rush of excitement coursing through him at the thought of finally reuniting with his family after a week apart. Lisa and their three daughters Mia, Zoe, and Lily were returning from their first real vacation, and the mere thought of their laughter filled him with warmth. Yet, as soon as he reached the terminal, the atmosphere shifted. News of their flight cancellation hit him like a cold wave, shattering his anticipation into fragments. There they were, Lisa managing a tight smile while the girls captivated by bright pink luggage bounced with unfiltered joy, oblivious to the chaos. Mark's heart sank, the scene transforming into a stark reminder of his journey. From the small town where he fought for every scrap of opportunity, to the towering success he now commanded in the renewable energy industry, moments like this dug deep. The irony of watching his family face indifference felt like a punch to the gut. Frustration ignited as he approached the customer service desk. The representatives wore their apathy like a shield, treating Mark and his family like mere statistics of corporate failure. He remembered the lessons instilled by his mentor: success isn't in riches but values. Each robotic response pushed him closer to a breaking point. What good was his empire if he couldn't protect those he loved? His muscles tensed, breath caught in his throat as confusion wrapped around him. Turning to scan the area, his eyes landed on an elderly airport worker, Charlie, maneuvering a luggage cart. There was an ease in Charlie's gaze, seasoned wisdom reflected in wrinkled features. Their eyes met, and for a fleeting moment, Mark felt understood, an affirmation that resonated with his struggle. Sometimes it's about the journey, not just the destination, Charlie said, an offhand comment that dug deeper than he expected. Mark's stomach twisted. This was about more than just delayed travel. It painfully reminded him of the economic barriers he had fought against for years. Did he really embody the ideals he preached to his girls about fairness and justice? Before he could spiral further, a thought intruded: time was slipping away. He looked at Lisa and their daughters, who still seemed unaware of the escalating storm. Was he simply another executive, disconnected from the struggles of everyday people? His carefully sculpted success started to feel hollow. Torn between maintaining an image of perfection and teaching his daughters the importance of justice, he struggled against internal urges. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A sense of determination surged through him. This wasn't merely a hiccup in their vacation, it was an opportunity for his daughters to witness a different kind of success. But just then, the crackling intercom delivered news of their delayed flight. Mark stood at a precipice, feelings crashing like waves against a rocky shore. Should he confront the indifference that had turned their joyful reunion into a struggle? He could feel the weight of every hardship driving him forward. With every heartbeat, the decision loomed: a moment that would define not just their day but their understanding of wealth and unity. The weighty implications hung heavily in the air, an unanswered question waiting for his response. The intercom buzzed again, and this time it steadied Mark. He felt a shift within himself, as if the air had thickened with purpose. The flickering lights of the terminal illuminated his resolve. Frustration couldn't be his only legacy. This was a test of character, but not just for him, it could set a precedent for his daughters. "Let's get everyone gathered," he said, adopting a calm demeanor that belied the turmoil churning inside. Lisa raised an eyebrow, sensing something in his tone. She nodded slowly, calling the girls to the small huddle around their father. "Mia, Zoe, Lily," he started, speaking firmly but gently, "I know this isn't what we expected. You all were looking forward to surprises and fun, and instead, we've got a hiccup on our trip. But we can make something good out of this situation." Mia's face fell slightly. She was searching for reassurance, the kind he usually provided without effort. But here, he wasn't just trying to comfort her, he was imparting a lesson about handling adversity. Think of the amazing stories we'll have, he added, looking at Lisa, a silent appeal for support lodged within his gaze. We could be the ones to change how this is handled. Lisa smiled softly, catching on to his shift in perspective. Remember the time we got lost in the city, she chimed in, squeezing Mia's shoulder. It turned into an adventure. Some of the best moments come from unexpected problems. Mark watched the girls' expressions light up, their youthful optimism flashing back into the room like sunlight. But he knew the real lesson lay in the actions that followed. He had to confront the indifference he had felt not just for himself, but for others who faced the same struggles they did. Let us find out how we can get the best resources, he asserted, resolute. They made their way to the customer service desk once more, this time with a sense of purpose, almost like warriors preparing for battle. The representatives remained unmoved, answering with scripted lines devoid of humanity. Every response met with Mark's calculated calm pushed him forward. He recalled Charlie's words, this was more than an inconvenience, it was an opportunity for meaningful change. As their names were called, he stepped in front, clearing his throat. Look, he began, I understand that things don't always go as planned. But my family and I deserve to be treated as human beings, not just numbers in your queue. My daughters are here, excited from their trip, and I need you to help us find a solution. In moments like this, compassion can mean more than anything else. The representative paused, her eyes flickering with an inkling of realization at the urgency in his voice. Behind him, Lisa exchanged glances with him that spoke volumes. Mark felt something shift in the air, perhaps it was the power of intention aligning with action. As the representative's demeanor softened slightly, Mark felt strength surging not just to challenge the bureaucracy but to exemplify values he had cultivated for years. This was a moment of integrity, a lesson not solely for his daughters but for himself, too. With hope threading through the atmosphere, they worked together toward a solution. In defining moments such as these, Mark discovered resilience shaped by vulnerability. Yet, as they secured the new arrangements, he couldn't shake an unsettling thought: were these lessons enough? Would his daughters truly grasp the full weight of what he was trying to convey? As they ambled toward the concourse in search of a snack, Mark's internal dialogue stirred restlessly. Mark sensed the next hurdle approaching. A man from the airline sought to discuss issues related to compensation, but the real confrontation loomed in Mark's own heart. The challenge of embodying the values he preached loomed larger than the delay or the indifference they faced, a test of his character he could not ignore. Mark leaned against the terminal wall, the hum of the bustling airport fading into a distant murmur as he prepared himself for the impending conversation. The airline representative, a tall man in a crisp suit, approached with a stack of papers in hand, flashing a rehearsed smile that failed to reach his eyes. Mark felt the urge to retreat churn within him, but he resisted, moving forward instead. Mr. Turner? The representative gestured to the paperwork. I'd like to discuss the issue regarding your travel arrangements. Let us cut to the chase. Mark's voice was steadier than he felt. I want to understand your company's plan to resolve this mess and ensure my family is taken care of properly. The man's demeanor shifted ever so slightly, eyes darting to the group of Mark's daughters, giggling under Lisa's watchful eye. Mark could see the apprehension flicker in the representative's posture as he sensed the stakes had increased beyond his anticipated checklist. Of course, sir, he replied, fumbling with a pen. We can offer you a compensation package for the troubles. Compensation? That's a start, but it's not enough. My daughters deserve more than a trite gesture. Mark's emotional pulse quickened as he leaned in closer, his focus sharpening. They need to feel valued. They need an experience that doesn't just teach them about inconvenience but shows them how to navigate through challenges. An awkward silence filled the space between them. Mark realized he was confronting not only the man's corporate nature but the fear that had long lived within him, the fear of standing up for his values. Do you even understand what it means to inconvenience a family? Or to take responsibility for it? The words slipped out before he could temper them, each syllable charged with meaning. The representative blinked, suddenly struck by the intensity of Mark's gaze. I assure you, we're doing our best under the circumstances exactly. Mark interrupted, his voice rising slightly. Your best hasn't been good enough for a long time. This isn't just business, you're dealing with lives, with experiences that shape who we are. Mia's eyes widened, and Mark caught a glimpse of the lesson unfolding before them all. He wasn't just standing up for his family, he was showcasing to his daughters what it meant to advocate and demand dignity from systems designed to diminish individual worth. Hours felt like minutes, but the tension in the air crystallized into palpable energy, and at that moment, Mark realized he wasn't just taking a stand for his family. He was tapping into a reservoir of strength he had blurred in the chase for stability. This is your chance to change the narrative, he continued, his voice steadying as he calmed himself down. Help us turn this negative into something positive. Are you willing to be part of that change? The representative hesitated, he was no longer just reciting company policy. Mark's determination was palpable, making his role seem more significant than just resolving a financial matter. Slowly, the man nodded, the barrier of indifference wavering as he contemplated the weight of Mark's words. I can escalate this to my supervisor and see what more we can do, he conceded, shifting uncomfortably in his shoes. Thank you. Mark's voice softened, the immediate confrontation yielding to hope. That's what I wanted to hear. As the conversation transitioned into practical details, Mark reflected on the evolution happening within him. The hesitation that once held him captive now dissolved into clarity. He was becoming a more assertive version of himself, keenly aware of the thresholds he was willing to cross for those he loved. But as they finalized the arrangements, a chilling thought washed over him. What if this was just the beginning? What if in standing up for his family, he was awakening a part of himself that also sought resolution in his own unresolved struggles? The confrontation he ignited was not just about the airline's service. Deeper issues lurked beneath the surface of his life, waiting for their moment to emerge. Uncertainty loomed like a shadow as he exited the conversation, knowing the next test awaited. Would he face his internal conflicts with the same courage he had shown today? Mark found himself scanning the terminal in search of answers, the realization that the most significant battles were not just against indifference but also within himself. He noticed Mia, Zoe, and Lily laughing again, vibrant and unburdened, blissfully unaware of what lay ahead. That joy shifted something within him. Perhaps, he thought, it was time to confront not only external obstacles but to delve deeper into his own vulnerabilities. The real challenge loomed ahead with the rising doubts of his own insecurities. It was time to face not just the airline, but the choices he made in his own life, and whether he had the courage to change them. What awaited him felt daunting, but as Mark walked towards the concourse, he now had a flicker of hope illuminating the path before him. The day had become not a series of inconveniences, but a journey towards something greater. Mark stood at the edge of the bustling terminal, feeling the electric buzz of familial laughter juxtaposed with the inner tumult of his thoughts. The dare he had just taken in his discussion with the airline representative marked a significant shift in his self-perception, a spark igniting within him that hinted at a road less traveled. The echoes of Mia, Zoe, and Lily's giggles filled him with warmth, yet the thrill of asserting himself also brought an undeniable weight. What had he truly been avoiding? As the carousel of thoughts spun faster, he began to realize that this moment was not merely about salvaging their travel plans. It was about confronting a deeper, darker truth lurking beneath the facade of his mundane responsibilities. Standing before a new mirror, Mark caught a reflection of a man who often prioritized others' needs over his own, an instinct he always justified with duty but now craved examination. While the girls remained blissfully entertained, Mark withdrew into quiet contemplation. He pondered every hesitation he had felt when considering his professional role, the long, oft-ignored ambitions that had lain dormant while he diligently fulfilled his responsibilities at work and home. He questioned whether he had halted his own growth by chaining himself to a routine that brought security but little joy or passion. What if he pursued a different path? Could he muster the strength to change the narrative not just for his family, but for himself too? The flickering hope ignited a sense of urgency. He had seen today that change lay within reach if he was willing to grasp it. Finding a nearby seat, he pulled out his smartphone. The shadow of self-doubt loomed large as he navigated through messages and emails. The urgency to connect with old colleagues surged, reminding him of the aspirations laid aside for a life well-structured yet wanting. He typed a few lines, reaching out to an old mentor, someone who had challenged him to think bigger, to break free from the self-imposed constraints he had nurtured over the years. "I've been thinking a lot," he hesitated, then pressed send. "About what I want my next chapter to look like." A sense of trepidation washed over him. What would they think? Would entering a new arena feel like stepping onto an unknown battlefield? He could picture the contortions of doubt, the fearful whispers questioning his resolve and capabilities, yet, mixed with the anxiety was the thrill of possibility. It was intoxicating, liberating even, to embrace the uncertain. Boldness ran in his veins now. He recalled how fiercely he had fought for his family. Why not extend that same tenacity towards his own aspirations? Each step, each conversation, could be a building block toward a future reclaimed and redefined. Suddenly, the laughter of his daughters broke through his reverie as they approached with Lisa, their mother, a comforting anchor amidst the storm of his introspection. Their joyful faces and unbridled enthusiasm fueled his determination. If he wanted to be a role model for them, he needed to model the courage to chase his dreams and embrace the unknown. "Hey girls!" he called out, his voice infused with newfound energy. "How about when we get back home, we start planning our next big adventure as a family?" They cheered, completely tuning into his enthusiasm, and he could see it the glimmer of excitement that mirrored the reckless potential he had just unearthed in himself. Mark glanced at Lisa, who raised an eyebrow, her expression shifting from curious to supportive. She knew him better than anyone, and perhaps this was the moment they would navigate together. However, as the chorus of feminine joy filled the air once more, a disconcerting thought intruded his mind. He felt a shift, an undercurrent that suggested he was standing on the precipice of something transformative, courageous but undeniably fraught with uncertainty. Before he could dive deeper into this internal shift, far across the terminal, he spotted a familiar face among a crowd of travelers, someone from his past who could either reignite old wounds or unleash a new wave of opportunity. It was time to confront what waited, a moment that would demand clarity of purpose and conviction, forcing him to choose between comfort and confrontation. Would he seize the opportunity to redefine himself, or let old habits and fears pull him back? Mark's heart raced as he took a step toward the unknown, aware that his next decision could reshape their lives forever. As Mark navigated through the busy terminal, each step toward that familiar face resonated with a tectonic shift beneath his feet. The air became thicker, suffused with the complex emotions of anticipation and dread. Was this a confrontation with his past that would shackle him to old regrets, or an opportunity to burn those bridges and forge a new path? Each step echoed a decision about his ambition to evolve, one that was still muddied by the fears of failure that had held him back for so long. His mind raced with recollections of the man he had once aspired to be, the risk-taker, the dreamer who was not afraid to challenge the status quo. Now, in the face of that possibility, he couldn't escape the question, would he be that man again, or was he destined to remain a specter of who he had hoped to become? When he finally reached the figure, a once prominent colleague named Ryan, Mark felt a jolt of recognition mixed with apprehension. Ryan had always exuded a magnetic air of success, triumph intertwined with rebellion. Their paths had diverged when Mark chose stability, a choice that now felt like both a comfort and a cage. How had Ryan's life unfolded? Was his journey filled with the same second-guessing that clouded Mark's thoughts now? "Mark. It's been ages." Ryan's voice boomed, cutting through the din of the terminal. "Ryan, good to see you." Mark managed a smile, though the words tasted bittersweet on his tongue. "Let's grab a drink, catch up." Ryan's invitation hung in the air, laden with unspoken implications. Beyond a simple reunion, it felt like an invitation to explore a possible realm of ambition that Mark had been avoiding. Mark hesitated. A part of him longed to seize this moment as a push toward transformation, but another voice whispered doubts about what lies potentially undiscovered. He felt the weight of the world tilting back toward monotony. "Sure, let's find somewhere quiet." "I have a lot on my mind," Mark replied, surprised at the tremor of eagerness laced within his voice. Minutes later, seated in a dimly lit bar filled with muffled conversation, Ryan leaned in, his eyes glittering with excitement. I've got some big projects coming up. Maybe you'd be interested in contributing? It's time you stepped back into the arena. You've always had what it takes. Suddenly, the flickering warmth of possibility engulfed Mark. He fired questions at Ryan: the motivations behind his projects, the challenges faced, the freedom achieved from risking comfort. As Ryan illuminated the details, Mark's heart thudded with the realization that he was on the precipice of rediscovering himself, igniting dormant ambitions. "Why did you leave?" Mark asked, probing deeper, unwilling to let Ryan's polished narrative gloss over the hardships. Ryan paused, then replied. "I learned that waiting for the right time can lead to never taking action at all. Keep chasing the fear, Mark. It's where the gold lies." Each word reverberated within Mark, chipping away at the barricades he had constructed around his aspirations. What had he been waiting for? Was it not time to embrace what he yearned for: a life filled with passion and driven purpose? As they talked, the chaotic backdrop of the airport faded away, but suddenly, a thought pierced through the conversation, sharp and unsettling. What if pursuing this new direction alienated the very people he had fought for? Would chasing ambition betray the values of family he held dear? Would his pursuit create a schism between him and Lisa, who had always been his compass? Mark found himself at a crossroads. The allure of professional revival battled against the fundamental need to remain a steadfast father and partner. He felt the pulse of his internal conflict quicken as Ryan's fervor painted a vivid picture of success he craved yet feared. In that moment, Mark's resolve solidified. The journey ahead would demand clarity and the courage to navigate these deeper values, merging ambition with authenticity. And once the conversation ended, he felt like he had yet to make a choice that could echo through all parts of his life, not merely isolated decisions he'd been entertaining in this fiery discussion. "Let us talk more about those projects," Mark stated, the words rolling off his tongue. He welcomed the challenge. He was finally ready to face the tumultuous blending of personal ambition and heartfelt devotion. But just as the excitement surged within him, a sudden realization struck like lightning: his family was still waiting for him, perhaps at the mercy of his unfolding plans. Would he act in a way that aligned these diverging paths, or would the duality of his choices lead to inevitable conflict? As he rose to leave the bar, a familiar sensation gripped him: anticipation mingled with apprehension. The journey was just beginning, and every step would demand an alignment of values that felt precariously layered. A decision loomed, just on the horizon. Nobody could foresee what awaited him beyond this threshold, but one thing was certain: the time had come for him to face his deepest knots and redefine what fulfillment would look like for both himself and those he loved. And the stakes would be higher than ever. The empty bar echoed softly, the lingering warmth of conversation fading into an unsettling silence as Mark stepped out, the chill of brisk air coursing over him. Thoughts wrestled in his mind, a chaotic cacophony of ambition and loyalty. He had shared laughter with Ryan, and tasted the allure of a promising future. But as he glanced at the luminous sky outside, a dark cloud of uncertainty overshadowed his renewed vigor. The drive home was a blur. Each passing vehicle seemed to reflect fragments of his former self: men and women pursuing dreams, many clinging to the rearview mirror of what they left behind. Mark gripped the steering wheel tighter, wrestling with the volatility of his emotions. For years, he had played it safe, opting for financial stability over the thrill of potential greatness. Was it madness to reconsider that choice now, especially with the echoes of fatherly responsibilities gnawing at him? As the familiar streetlights illuminated his neighborhood, a deeper sense of urgency consumed him. He envisioned Lisa, patiently waiting at home with their 3 daughters, relying on his love, presence, and decisions to guide their family. In the interplay of professional aspirations and family devotion, the contours of his identity lay at stake. Could he nurture his ambitions without alienating the very foundation of his life? Entering the house, he was greeted by the delightful chaos of everyday life. Laughter and playful screams from the living room soothed his nerves, yet the guilt of potential change pierced through the joy. Mark found himself pausing at the threshold, watching Lisa effortlessly corral the girls' energy into a makeshift game. Her dedication mirrored his fears. It was never just about personal gain for him, it always had been about building something together. "Daddy!" Their voices erupted, clamoring for attention. Mark knelt down, enveloped by their youthful exuberance, and the love surged through him. In each embrace, he felt the weight of responsibility intertwine with yearning. His daughters were innocent, untainted by the complexities of ambition. They were his compass, but they were also a tether, one that could potentially hold him back from chasing a new frontier. "What were you up to today?" Lisa's voice jolted him, awash with curiosity and warmth. "Oh, just some meetings, catching up with an old colleague," he replied, careful to keep his tone light, yet the connotation lingered heavy within him. "Anything exciting?" she probed, her eyes glinting with the hope that he might reveal some spark of inspiration. Mark hesitated. Here lay the crux of his conflict. The urge to expand his horizons was marred by her unwavering support and the fear of displacing their precious equilibrium. "You could say that," he finally said, veiling the intensity of his thoughts in light humor. "I might have found a few projects worth considering." "Oh really?" "Sounds intriguing," Lisa stated, excitement threading through her voice. "You've always wanted to pursue something like that." Mark forced a playful smile, the dichotomy within him screaming for acknowledgement. He savored the fleeting moment, yet uncertainty twisted in his chest. What would it mean to embrace the spark? Part of him envisioned a life brimming with professional triumphs, but another part chilled at the thought of breaking away. As he returned to the living room, each giggle resonated with the truth he had to confront. Just how far had he been willing to stretch his aspirations? What if the projects gleamed with promise and led to his ideal career, only to risk fracturing the family he cherished? Mark took a deep breath, steeling himself for the conversations ahead, not just with Lisa, but with the most crucial visitor, the unwavering habit of self-doubt that had shaped his choices for far too long. Would he choose to silence it, stepping into the light of transformation, or would he allow it to shadow his intentions, tethering him to the familiar yet stagnant? In that moment, the course of his future flickered before him, shadows and light intertwining as he understood. Paving a new path required more than just ambition, it demanded courage, authenticity, and a recalibration of values that could bind his pursuit of greatness to his love for family. And as night began to blanket the world outside, a resonating realization settled within him. Would he choose the path of ambition, knowing the stakes, or take solace in the comfort of the known? The decision loomed like an approaching storm, promising chaos and clarity in equal measure. Tomorrow would demand that he articulate his dreams to Lisa, to engage in a dialogue thick with possibility and fear. In that conversation lay the potential for new beginnings, but also the risk of exposing vulnerabilities that had long been hidden. The moment of truth was fast arriving. He needed to confront not only the ambitions flickering in his mind but the heart that anchored him to the world he loved. The morning sun poured through the windows, illuminating the kitchen with a soft glow that contrasted sharply with the tension building within Mark. He moved through the familiar motions of breakfast, pouring cereal, fruit, and coffee, but the usual comfort felt distant. Today was different. He knew he had to confront the swirling emotions that had occupied his thoughts since that fateful night at the bar. Lisa entered with a radiant smile, undeterred by the weight of the conversation looming just beyond the surface. "You seem deep in thought, Mark. What's going on?" Her tone was light, yet she appeared to sense the gravity of his internal debate. Mark paused, the prospect of honesty conflicting with the protective instinct to keep his family shielded from uncertainty. "Just thinking about possibilities," he said vaguely, a diversionary tactic that felt increasingly inadequate. "Possibilities?" Lisa's brow furrowed, her curiosity piqued. "That sounds promising. Are you considering new projects?" His heart raced at the notion of sharing his ambitions. "I met with Ryan. We talked about some potential opportunities." The words slipped out, revealing more than he intended, but they also felt like a tether to a dream he had temporarily abandoned. Lisa turned, her interest sparking. "That's great. What kind of projects?" A rush of adrenaline coursed through Mark. He opened his mouth to elaborate, but the fear of how she might react jolted him back. Would she be supportive, or would the shadows of doubt flicker over her face? He embarked on a path of cautious honesty. "They're big, really big. They could change a lot in terms of my career." "Change how?" Lisa was direct, her voice steady. Her unwavering gaze held no judgment, only the promise of loyalty he depended on. He inhaled sharply, preparing to lay bare his aspirations while weighing the potential consequences. What if I told you I've been thinking about starting my own business? Something that could give me a chance to really innovate in my field, and maybe beyond? The silence that followed felt monumental. Mark could almost hear the clock ticking, palpable in its relentless march toward uncertainty. Lisa absorbed this revelation with an intensity that made him feel both exposed and relieved. "Wow," she finally said, her expression a mixture of surprise and contemplation. "That's huge. What's stopping you?" Mark grappled with the visceral pang of guilt, grappling with the weight of his family's expectations and the unpredictability of his aspirations. "I suppose I worry about everything, the risk, the stability for us. What if it doesn't work out? Mark, you've been talented in everything you've taken on. We've built a good life together, and I hope you know I'll support you. But I also want you to feel fulfilled." Her response ignited a flicker of determination within him, illuminating the darkest corners of doubt. Their daughters spilled into the room, giggling about an imaginary adventure. Their light-hearted distractions coaxed a smile from Mark, yet he remained acutely aware of the heavier conversation. "Can we go to the zoo today?" one of them chirped, eyes sparkling with excitement. "After breakfast, we can," Lisa replied, seamlessly shifting gears. Mark watched her with admiration. Her ease in navigating the demands of their daughters while acknowledging his dreams reinforced just how deep the roots of their partnership ran. "Maybe I can find a balance," he thought, a resolve forming in the recesses of his mind. The thought prompted a realization: he didn't have to abandon stability completely to explore a new venture. Rather, it could become part of a greater narrative, intertwining his ambition with the love and support he cherished. However, as laughter and joy filled the space around him, the shadow of self-doubt dared him to reconsider. Could he offer his family the security they relied on while still pursuing his passion? The path ahead glittered with dreams and challenges, but its outcome remained unpredictable at best. As he observed the fluidity of Lisa's role as a mother and partner, Mark understood that his apprehension needed to be confronted head-on. Fear was an antagonist that thrived in ambiguity, and it was time for him to take decisive action. Would he have the courage to bridge the divide between safety and ambition, forging a journey that honored both his family and his potential? The decision lay heavy in the air, and as he lifted the coffee mug to his lips, he felt the stirrings of both fear and excitement coursing through him. Tomorrow would bring another conversation, one that would test the foundations of his dreams against the stability of the life he built. He knew that whatever transpired, he stood at the precipice of change, ready to leap into both the unknown and the possible world that awaited him. But before he could act, he had to confront the most formidable opponent of all, his relentless self-doubt. And as the day wore on, the question lingered like a whisper in the autumn breeze: how far was he willing to stretch his capabilities, prepared to accept the fallout of ambition? Mark stood at the threshold of his decision, contemplating how to harness his ambitions while supporting his family. The familiar morning chaos faded into the background as the question of who he wanted to be loomed large in his mind. He considered the myriad of conversations he could have with Lisa and the implications each one carried. How could he articulate the vision coursing through him, the insights drawn from his discussions with Ryan about entrepreneurship? Later that afternoon, as the zoo trip faded into the rearview mirror and the girls settled down for a nap, Mark slipped into his home office. The cluttered desk had become a sanctuary filled with sketches, notes, and an assortment of books. His dreams were an unfinished masterpiece laid bare for anyone willing to see. He settled into his chair and took a breath, grounding himself in the space where ambition mingled with fear. Opening his laptop, he averted his gaze from the pile of startup guides stacked nearby. Feeling both intimidated and inspired by his own ideas, Mark began typing notes, outlining potential business concepts that danced tantalizingly at the edges of his thoughts. Attention to detail and meticulous planning were strengths he often relied upon, yet self-doubt clawed at the edges of his confidence. "What if I'm just not cut out for this?" he muttered to himself, correcting the phrasing as a voice inside rebutted, "But what if you are?" The push and pull of his internal dialogue ignited sparks of determination. His fingers continued to dance across the keyboard as he built a vision, a world where his expertise could flourish beyond the constraints of the corporate grind. As his ideas flowed, Mark felt a sense of empowerment wash over him. He recognized the skills he had accumulated, the rapport with clients, the ability to analyze market trends, and the knack for creative problem-solving. Each stroke of the keyboard transformed self-doubt into actionable plans, steadily redefining his perception of success. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as his thoughts began to crystallize. He had always been a jokester in the office, easing tensions and fostering camaraderie. What if he incorporated that spirit into his venture? Intrigued, he began sketching out a concept that combined innovation with an engaging approach. Suddenly, a phone notification broke his focus, announcing the arrival of a new message. It was Ryan reaching out a check-in text to see how he was feeling about their earlier conversation. Mark hesitated for a moment, contemplating the wisdom of indulging the newfound hope taking root inside him. He had proposed that their startup would fuse creativity with pragmatism, but what if the vision was still too nebulous to share? Nevertheless, he realized now was the time to step beyond his confines. He responded, pouring his current thoughts into the message and barely pausing to consider his choice. The act of reaching out felt invigorating, a beacon of rebirth amid the turmoil of ambition. As the minutes wore on, Mark felt a shift in his mindset. He was not merely drafting a reply, he was embracing the possibilities that his ambitions held. With each word typed, he wrestled the chains of doubt a little further onto the periphery. A new sensation anchored him. His ambition was not an adversary but an ally. However, as twilight approached, he was struck with an uncomfortable realization. Each step he took forward meant he was moving away from the familiar stability he had cultivated. Would this journey create fractures in the harmony of family life he valued? The vision before him shimmered with potential, but its implications felt heavy. As he prepared to send the message, a new worry simmered beneath the surface. Kevin, his former colleague, who had pursued entrepreneurship unsuccessfully. Could his doubts echo Kevin's missteps? What if he was making a colossal mistake? Mark wavered at the moment of truth, the cursor blinking expectantly on the screen. Embracing uncertainty while staring at the precipice of his ambition, he found himself at a crossroads, contemplating both the unknown future and the safety of retreat. He took a deep breath, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Mark's journey towards self-fulfillment hung in the balance, and he knew the time had come to shift from dreaming to doing. As he clicked send and watched the message disappear into the ether, Mark realized he had taken a crucial step on the delicate path toward ambition. But little did he know, the threads of self-doubt he sought to sever so decisively would soon weave a new layer of complexity into his life. Would the demands of entrepreneurship stretch his capabilities further than he ever imagined, or would it unravel the stability he was so desperate to maintain? The uncertainty loomed, enticing and daunting, laying the foundation for what was yet to come. As the message blinked off into the digital void, Mark felt an exhilarating mix of relief and dread wash over him. Each heartbeat echoed a primal rhythm of both fear and excitement. What had he just initiated? There was no turning back now. He believed in the concept he had outlined, the blend of inspiration and pragmatism, but the specter of failure lurked ominously in the corners of his mind. He leaned back in his chair, the familiar contours of the desk a minute reminder of the old life, the secure life he had grown accustomed to. Waves of self-doubt surged forward. This was uncharted territory, and the stakes felt higher than ever. What would Lisa say? Would his wife view his aspirations as a return to childish ambition or as the pursuit of something greater? Mark's mind raced. The weight of necessity pressed down harder as it intertwined with desire. With a growing sense of urgency, he made the choice to carve out time for a meaningful conversation with Lisa. He needed her perspective and support before he proceeded further down this path. He rose from his desk and stepped into the living room, the distant sounds of his daughters playing in the backyard a comforting reminder of what he was aiming to protect. Walking over to the large window that overlooked the yard, he watched as their giggles floated in the air, each one a spark of joy. Lisa had dedicated her energy to being the unshakable foundation that held their family together, and that steadiness was invaluable to him. "Hey, girls! How about some ice cream?" Mark called out, shifting the atmosphere within the house from cacophony to calls of delight. The wild rush of little feet headed toward him, and for a moment, he almost forgot the internal storm raging within. With treats in hand, he orchestrated an impromptu kitchen celebration. This was an attempt to gauge Lisa's mood and to sidestep the seriousness that often enveloped their conversations. As the girls licked their cones with glee, Mark caught Lisa's eye an appreciative nod that reminded him they were partners in all this. "Alright, now that the important stuff is out of the way," he started, not knowing how to broach the topic without scaring the women in his life. The expression on Lisa's face shifted to one of curiosity mixed with concern as his tone grew serious. "I had a talk with Ryan today," he hesitated, the words taste-testing on his tongue. "About starting a business. Something of my own." He expected a cavalcade of questions and perhaps guarded skepticism. But instead, Lisa studied him for a moment, her brow slightly furrowed. "And how do you feel about that?" "I'm excited. But," he paused, letting the weight of uncertainty settle in the room, "I also feel terrified. What if it pulls me away from home too much? What if it takes more than I can give?" Lisa set her ice cream down and approached him, her expression softening. "Mark, you've always wanted to explore your potential. Starting your own venture, it's risky, but so is not trying. Maybe together we can find a balance." Her words ignited a flicker of hope within him. Perhaps this was possible after all. The conversations they had about compromises and teamwork had often revolved around less daunting topics: bills, parenting, groceries. The prospect of interweaving their lives even more deeply with shared ambitions and goals felt laden with something profound. But before Mark could savor that hope, a sudden rush of reality stormed in. Discussions of balance and risk were all well and good, but the practicalities loomed large. He envisioned sleepless nights, the challenge of fundraising, and adhering to deadlines, elements that would almost certainly echo through their family life. "Let's say you jump on this," Lisa added, summoning a more pragmatic edge. "How do you plan to ensure it doesn't disrupt our routine? Our stability?" A new weight pinched at Mark's gut, intertwining gratitude and apprehension. Lisa's support was invaluable, but she was right to frame it thus. Just envisioning the venture led to deeper questions he had yet to fully address. Suddenly the excitement felt almost intoxicating and overwhelming at once. The colleges of time, energy, and commitment were colliding, and Mark had the unshakable feeling that making the leap would demand more than he could calculate. "I don't have all the answers," he admitted, drowning momentarily in the currents of anxiety. "But I want to figure this out." Mark knew the path ahead would demand clarity, strategy, and an unwavering resolve, but it was the unknown implications of their commitment to each other that now nagged at him. As their conversation drifted into the evening glow, Mark felt his pulse quicken. This venture not only called for entrepreneurial energy but also a delicate negotiation of their shared lives. More complexities loomed on the horizon, driven by ambition but rooted firmly in family. This was only the beginning. What corridors of discovery would the journey reveal, and would they lead him towards self-actualization or unravel the fabric of their family life instead? The answer lay tantalizingly close, just beyond his reach. Mark Thompson stood at a crossroads within himself, a man metamorphosing from overwhelming self-doubt into a vibrant embodiment of ambition. The sunsetting rays cast an orange glow over the living room, as shadows of uncertainty danced alongside him. Lisa had embraced his aspirations, responding with warmth instead of skepticism. It was time to transition from dreams into actionable plans. Over the ensuing weeks, Mark consciously pivoted his approach to life. Crafting a business model around his vision, he infused passion and purpose into every endeavor. Those early stages, filled with brainstorming and strategizing, instilled a grounded sense of direction that invigorated his resolve. No more wavering in indecision. As he ventured into building his company, Mark forged connections with mentors, suppliers, and former colleagues who revitalized his spirit. Daily, he would rise before dawn, refreshed by purpose rather than duty. The thrill of creating something new outweighed the anxiety of risk. Each morning's quiet focus transformed his determination into tangible goals. He diligently tracked his progress, meticulously balancing family obligations while nurturing his entrepreneurial ambitions. This newfound energy enhanced not just his professional aspirations but also his familial relationships. A firm belief emerged: his daughters were witnessing a father who passionately chased his dreams, not just one who performed duties out of obligation. Conversations with Mia, Zoe, and Lily shifted from banal routines to discussions of dreams, aspirations, and the challenges ahead. They shared stories of victories big and small, painting a vivid tapestry of achievement within the warmth of their family nucleus. Mark's efforts began yielding results sooner than he anticipated. He secured initial funding from like-minded investors intrigued by his revolutionary approach to renewable energy solutions. The praise resonated not just as validation for his model, but as acknowledgement that he had indeed solidified a reputation built on integrity. Invitations to industry conferences followed. As he presented his vision to peers, Mark felt the air thick with affirmation. Established professionals were applauding his ambition while respecting his perspective on merging innovation with compassion. Even more gratifying was the moment of validation he received from Lisa. In a chance encounter at a dinner event, she proudly introduced him as the newfound entrepreneur who balanced vision with family values. It wasn't just their peers who saw this transformation. Mark emerged as a model for others, spearheading a relentless pursuit of dreams, intertwining both family and ambition seamlessly. Months later, standing on stage at their first major product launch, Mark was enveloped by an insatiable pride that was not just personal but reflective of the journey that had unfolded. The audience's applause washed over him like a tide of affirmation that echoed through the depths of his journey. He had amassed not just an innovative product but had catalyzed a momentum that promised to ripple through homes across the nation. Returning home, he was met by his daughter's excited chatter as he recounted the experience. Their eyes glowed with admiration. In that moment, he realized that the passion and drive he had reclaimed had become a cornerstone of their family ethos. He had evolved into a beacon of inspiration for them, symbolizing the courage to chase one's dreams and navigate through uncertainties. With each passing day, the internal barriers of self-doubt continued to dissolve into dust, replaced by an unwavering belief in his capabilities. This was not merely a triumph, it was a transformation, echoing the realization that fulfillment resides in the synthesis of pursuit and commitment. By choosing to confront his ambitions synergistically with family priorities, Mark was establishing a legacy where dreams thrived in tandem with love. As he tucked his daughters into bed that night, he couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of gratitude for the journey that had unfolded. The newfound balance of personal ambition alongside family devotion invigorated his spirit, a symbiosis that promised to sustain them all. Mark Thompson had emerged not just as a successful entrepreneur but as a husband and father who proved that fulfillment demands courage, authenticity, and a willingness to leap into the unknown, trusting that both dreams and love could soar. Now, as you reflect on Mark's incredible journey and the life-altering choices he made, you need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. The time to support our community is here. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Every action counts toward inspiring others to embark on their own journeys of transformation.